final webinar that we organize under the umbrella of the strategic implementation study on impact evaluation that ended this summer after having run for 2 years. And in this study, we aim to increase the capacity that we have as Elixir nodes to evaluate our impact. And today we will show you what we have learned along the way. And I am Kristine Stansberg, and I used to be the node coordinator of Elixir Norway until this summer. And I was co-leading this study together with Kim from Belgium, Anna from Portugal, and notably our own impact guru, Corinne, from the hub, and also Erika from the hub joined eventually. And I'm first happy now to hand over to Corinne to give us some background for the study. So please, Corinne.
Yeah, it's my very pleasure. So I noted that we have a few non-Elixir colleagues on the call. So we have one slide about Elixir, really what we do. So we build bioinformatics capacity, human capacity a lot, and infrastructure in Europe. And we also connect and develop a network of experts to make hundreds of bioinformatics services and guidelines freely available to all across the globe. So our user base really is global. So we provide databases, training, software tool, data standards, compute resource, and a range of experts. All of these following the principles of open science. What I would say here, because of the sort of event we are running today, is that we do that so that life scientists across the world can focus on their research rather than build the required infrastructure. Important elements to highlight in terms of Elixir's very special characteristic. We are a data infrastructure, so there is no big tunnel or telescope that you can visit. We are a people infrastructure. This is really our strength, and we are distributed across Europe. So these characteristics, they really bring unique flavors as well as challenges in our approach to do impact evaluation. So keep that in mind as we go forward to the next slide, please. So this table here, it's from a report, and I paste the link in the chat, published not so long ago, but it's really good because it gives you a flavor of the sort of stakeholders of research infrastructure that they are. And a lot of you today are going to be in the research infrastructure management, which is in the middle of the table. The important bit I'd like to say here is beyond Elixir's own characteristic, there's also loads of stakeholders which will have a range of expectations when it comes to evidence of public value, the impact of Elixir. And that brings an additional layer of complexity because you need to tailor that evidence of impact when you speak to different stakeholders. So if I take the example of the second line, the regional and local authorities, really, they're mostly interested in benefits to local businesses and the development of local and regional innovation ecosystems. But if you are communicating to the civil society and the general public, they might be more interested in the longer term impacts, such as health, energy, food security, etc. So it's very important to keep that in mind, that it's difficult to find evidence that will please everybody. So our approach in Elixir, when I started in 2018, we had to make a decision because, of course, we couldn't please everybody. So this very complicated flow diagram here is really to tell you what you could do. You could decide for your own research infrastructure. If you're very well funded and you can afford an in-house economist, but not just standard one that can really speak to a lot of people, has interpersonal skills, can generate enthusiasm across a distributed organization, get buy-in from key staff, that's a really super duper economist. Well, normally you're fine, you're going to be producing continuously, timely, state-of-the-art evidence of impact, and that's going to be relevant to all the funders and all the stakeholders that you have at your disposal. This is very rare. I don't know a research infrastructure that has an in-house economist of that kind. If you do have still a lot of funding, internal funding, perhaps you can decide to subcontract a specialized consultancy, and that is really good. A lot of infrastructures have done that. And in fact, at the very end of the presentation, we'll have a slide that shows all the sorts of impact reports that have been done by research infrastructures across Europe. Our very own European node of Elixir, Emboli BI, has published 2 impact reports, and you can see that one of them is pictured, Data-Driven Discovery, the very famous BIGRI report. I'll put the link in the Slack in the chat in a minute. This is good. This is state of the art. However, it answers a narrow range of questions. So the scope has to be narrow because you're basically paying an external contractor. So you cannot ask them to answer every question that you might be asked by your stakeholders. So in the end, what we did in Elixir, and it's good that some nodes can still afford to do impact reports, but we decided to build our own capacity. So find staff across our nodes that are willing to learn, that are not economists, that don't mean to become economists or impact evaluators, but that are learning to do what they can with the means at hand. This way, they would have some evidence that they can present to their particular set of stakeholders. And this is really where we've been. Next slide, please. So how we did that? We were really lucky. We had lots of little pots of funding. So we had European Union funding, RIPath, Converge, Pathos, RITrain. These are projects that had an impact component, and we were part of these projects. We also have, very lucky at Elixir, we have core funding. So we were able to fund first a staff exchange project with 3 Elixir nodes. And this was followed by a 2-year-long strategic implementation study that involved almost all the nodes that we have. We have about more than 20. And you can see the sort of things we've done. They are shown on this slide. We had formal training. We had nodes doing case studies that were relevant to their needs and their stakeholders. And we disseminated the results and good practices that we learned along the way. And today's event, it's really one of them. One main output that came out of that work, and next slide, is the Impact Toolkit. We talked about it for years. It took forever to get it out, but it's finally out. What does it contain? A lot of stuff. So we can't cover everything today, but I thought we would give you a flavor, and my colleagues will help me in that sense. Can you go to the next slide? So we will start with the defining your intended impacts and building on that, imagining the pathways that one can take towards achieving these impacts. And here I would like to hand in the microphone to Kim.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So my name is Kim. I am from the Belgian node. And as Corinne told you, I was also involved in this impact implementation study and with a use case with our node. But I will start with the basics. And a good place to start on your journey towards demonstrating impact is defining your broad impact areas that relate to the activities you are undertaking. These categories can be further refined as you progress, but they remain a good place to start. And of course, they can even feed into broader impacts, such as the United Nations Sustainable Developmental Goals. All activities carried out under the umbrella of Elixir, so mentioned the Elixir-related activities, they can be attached to one or more of the impact categories that you see on this slide. And these categories are in fact a useful way to describe what Elixir-related activities are meant to achieve in terms of impact. So there's lots of information of these slides, but let me mention 2 examples. You see, for example, the impact area research efficiency. This reflects to how Elixir-related activities influences research and more specifically the efficiency by providing infrastructure, resources and processes, and for sure making them more easier to use and more integrated. Another example I just want to highlight here is for example, policy influence, where we can have an effect or an impact, for example, on shaping the policy around science and fair. Of course, it's your first step to do to see where your focus should be. Can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, when we come to impact pathways, these are typically the first step in the impact evaluation process. So the best reference, well, or one of the references you can use is the guidebook that has been put together as part of the RI Paths project, which was tailored to specific needs of research infrastructures. So that was based on on case studies, including Elixir and also other infrastructures like EATRIS. And when you have a quick look at the slide, you see that there are three spheres. So you have the sphere of control, you have the sphere of influence, and the sphere of interest. And these are, in fact, the most three important elements to keep in mind as you work on pathway logics for impact. So the sphere of control is what you have under your control, the activities. The sphere of influence is the outcome of your activities, and the sphere of interest is the real impact. And as you move from the left to the right on this impact pathway, you lose, in fact, control, and evidence is harder to measure. To give you some more context, so in the sphere of control, that are typically the activities you promise or that you have planned to do in a project, for example, your key performance indicators. The sphere of influence then covers the outcomes, short-term or long-term, which you can partly steer, but you have them less under control. And then most to the right, the sphere of interest is the high-level impact, which is harder to measure and beyond your control. Next slide, please. Okay, pathway logics, they can take many forms, ranging from very complex to rather simple. And when people talk about impact, those pathway logic, they sometimes use other names like logical framework and theories of change, depending on the context. Lots of money, billions of dollars, pounds, euros, are being allocated by international development organizations to projects and applications that require pathway logics. It is even so that Horizon Europe is asking for proposals to articulate how proposed activities will lead to outcomes and impacts. For example, and this is showed on the slide, a real life example from the Buy COVID project. I will not go into detail on this pathway, but if you can have a look that it starts on the left with the objectives in the project, and if you go more to the right, you result into the impact, so the sphere of influence. And if you look at the middle of this pathway, you see that many of the items are in fact connected. So that's why these pathways can get very complex. To show that it does not always have to be that complex, we have a very simple example as well at the top of the slide, how you want to have the impact of people feeling safe and what you do for that. So your activity is installing street lighting. I think that was all for me. Yes, thank you. So I'll go back to Christine now.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. So we thought that we could take a small break in the slides here and just hear amongst us, how does this work in practice? How do we get started when we want to measure the impact? Where do we begin, or does it work? Or can you say can you give us some of your experience, Kim?
Yes. What we have done when we started measuring impact, so I will start with the pathways first. We wanted to define our impact areas. And what we firstly did was we had a look on the requirements of our funders. So we had a look in the templates we have to fill in for the reporting and also for the project proposals. And in fact, it covered all the areas. So they wanted information on impact, on scientific, on economical, on societal, and on policy. So it was hard to focus there as they were very, very vague. We also had some feedback from the Science Commission, and they were a bit more specific. They were mainly interested in usage and feedback from the users. So they wanted to make sure we were doing the right things. So as our funders stayed vague, we started thinking of what is really important to us and where can we make a difference. So that's how we started off there. For the impact areas, if we go a bit further and we looked into building the pathway logics, we did the example. So we made the impact framework for one of our services. We used our data submission tool for that. And that really helped us to see the bigger picture. Obviously, yeah, we hadn't done that before, and we missed some steps. We also missed some indicators that we didn't take into account, or we saw more opportunities for measuring the evidence. So it was a double win. It helped us to see the bigger picture. And we also use this example when we explain impact to our partners, which are mostly research groups. And when we have a look at the way we ask feedback for reporting, we very much get information on the KPIs, so on their activities. But they don't have the mindset yet to go the steps further. And that's normal. They have never been asked and they have never been trained. So when we try to explain what we want from them, from the reporting, I show them that example, and it helps them to get into the mindset of the impact measurement. We are not there yet. It's something I bring up in our project meetings. We've also started a draft sheet. We did a first attempt to make it easier for them to grasp what we really want. So we started with tables and some structure. It often helps to give them some structure. So this is being followed up. Yeah, and we go from there and see how it evolves.
Thanks, Kim. Helpful for me, at least. How about you, Anna? You've done a lot as well.
Yeah, so if we look, we can look at impact from two perspectives. We can look at from the beginning when you plan, and you can look for what you want to achieve and come backwards, or you can look and go to your achievements and document them and show the impact they have. And this bridges with our next topic, that is, if we move to the next slide, that is the indicators. So the components of the impact pathways that Kim was mentioning can be documented so that they will be showed and we can tell a story. They can be documented, monitored, measured by using quantitative and qualitative indicators. And in addition, other types of evidence, for instance, narratives, lists of examples, case studies, and stories, as I was mentioning before. If we go to the next slide, please. So we have to do a selection of indicators that are relevant for the works that we have done. And these works can be about a research infrastructure, or can be about a specific activity in a research infrastructure, or a specific project that you have. And we have many documents that already facilitate our compiling efforts. For instance, Elixir has defined a set of indicators that Kim has previously showed to you, and you can see where your activities fit best in those areas, or you can do the other way around. When you start thinking about your strategy, you can visit what Elixir proposes and try to emphasize a few areas where you are stronger in building your case. Or if you are going to report, you can do the effort of classifying what you have done accordingly. And you have the Elixir toolkit, and also an article that preceded it, and it is available here. Also, DS3 has produced a list of key performance indicators where you can map your activities, or where you can see if you are responding to their goals. In addition, also the OECD has done a similar, or proposed a similar framework. And then there are these two projects, the RIPath and the PATHOS. And particularly the RIPath is a way that supports the application of the knowledge coming from the pathways by the indicators to a direct application of what you have. And this is where you find, because as mentioned in the beginning, we have limited resources. We can, recurring to these areas and indicators, show how meaningful our activities were in an easy way to monitor, and in a simple way to understand and to communicate. Okay, can we come to the next slide, please?
Yeah, then it's me again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems easy, and I think it was somehow easy to find indicators for the activity and the output, but how do you feel about the outcome and the impact? What's your experience there? Did you come up with something good?
I could say so, because but as was previously explained by Kim, it is now further away from our sphere of control, and progressively like that. But for instance, if you have a training program, like a data management program, and this program starts reaching a lot of trainees from several different institutions at the national and the international level, you will raise the curiosity of your colleagues, and also have impact internally, because they feel motivated and recognized. But also the national authorities, for instance, on data management, start thinking that they can rely on you to these data management related activities. And they start inviting you to policy think tanks. For instance, we were invited for the National Think Tank of Open Science, and we're also in collaboration with the National Foundation for Science and Technology with respect to the delivery of other courses, and also engage with the Portuguese node of the RDA to, in partnership, offer some training. So we could have the privilege of touching the impact of our activity, which was the training program. Of course, that this takes a lot of time, and this is not the only example. Sometimes you just start with something small, and then in the end, you gain a project, or you gain the participation in a national initiative. And like that, you are seeing that you have impact, because then your knowledge is being channeled to influence national documents and also international policies.
Yeah, indeed. Thanks, Anna. How about you, Kim? Do you? Oh yeah, okay, we move on. I would just like to ask Kim for a few.
Yeah, I can give you what we experienced in our note. So we also did the exercise of evaluating what evidence we were already collecting. So yeah, we have the procedures, we are collecting information, and especially in a distributed infrastructure, it is likely that relevant data is already being collected, and maybe more effort should be done on the coordination and the standardization on what people collect. And that was in case also a bit true for our node. So we collected already lots of information, not directly on impact, but we did collect information on outcomes. For example, citations of publications, that's an outcome. You do not have an influence on who cites your article. That's a very easy or a very straightforward example. So, and while doing this really mapping exercise, we found out that we indeed collect lots of information, but it was spread out in several documents and it was sometimes underused. But we also noticed that sometimes evidence of impact was hidden in reporting documents. So sometimes you ask to answer a certain question and they give you not the answer to the question, but they give you something which was in fact related to impact. So the one evaluating open questions should always have like an open mind and to see what are they really writing here. We are trying to standardize this. It's not easy because we have different formats to follow, and I think that will be the case in every node. Funders ask specific templates. Yeah, we're thinking about on how to do that. Again, also work in progress, and I think we should do that in collaboration with our partners, see also what is feasible for them, because in the end we're always asking this information from our partners. So if we can make that as straightforward and as easy for them and most informative for us, it's a win-win.
Corinne, please.
Yes, I wanted to add, and perhaps that would help answer Carol's question in the chat about how we measure impact. So in terms of, as you move from left to right in your impact logic, from your activities towards outcomes, towards impact, it's increasingly difficult to measure things, really. I mean, it's quite easy for your activities because this is what you're doing, it's within your control, and there you're more likely to have quantitative indicators, numbers. As you move towards impact, it tends to become qualitative. But of course, if you have at your disposal some economists, then you can do really quantitative things in the impact sphere. You can, for example, do what's called econometrics or cost-benefit analysis and really monetize the effect of your activities in the impact sphere. But this is not for everyone, and you need to have an economist at hand. So what the rule of thumb really is to do what you can that makes sense, that is not going to stretch your resources. I would say this is probably, yes, the best approach.
Thanks, Corinne, and also thanks, Kim. I will then hand back to Anna, I think, to talk about how we build capacity in this topic.
Thank you, Christine. And I will pick exactly where Corinne left us, and it was like we have not huge resources to dedicate on them. So it is important to disseminate the skills about assessing impact. And because these skills will enable the people who is doing the activities to also collect the indicators and then go for some case studies. So can you please advance one slide? Thank you. So there are a range of approaches to do this. Various projects mentioned earlier supported these different approaches. And for instance, in this implementation study that we carried out at Elixir, we had the support of EFIs to deliver formal training workshops, coaching sessions, and stimulate also all participants of the nodes to deliver their their impact stories in show and tell. And there is a huge diversity on how they represent their achievements and the impact of their achievements. But there are, if you look at these pictures, and they are similar to those logical frameworks that Kim was showing, they use the same perspective and go from activities to outcomes to impact, sometimes with additional categories in between. But the common thing is that they go from what happens in their nodes and what are the activities that they want to show their impact, sometimes to the funders, sometimes to the international community, sometimes inwards to the scientists there. For instance, and if you could advance one slide, please. For instance, we use the Elixir All Hands, that is the meeting of Elixir people. We use that meeting to have a session dedicated to impact at the node level, where several stories were told. Kim already mentioned some. I could say, for instance, that in Portugal, we have reported or assessed the impact of our establishing project at the national level. We picked all the indicators that were collected throughout the project and cross-checked it or mapped it against the right path, the OECD, the S3, and the Elixir suggestions for indicators and for areas of impact. And it was really interesting how we could demonstrate that during the establishment of our national research infrastructure, we already achieved several indicators, for instance, in the number of users, in the number of training programs delivered, and so on and so forth. But I think that there are many, many other examples, and this can be consulted in a link that Corinne may provide for you all. And I think that you can also have a look at this All Hands. And I hand over again to Christine so that she can gather further case studies and opinions on this.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I think you already shared a lot of the tactics from your experience here. I would like to add from our experience in Norway, where we also, of course, try to build some competence on this and realize that it's very hard to sit with this on your own. As a node coordinator, you need to involve also the rest of your colleagues, because it's really hard to collect all of these numbers, to decide which numbers to collect. And the more people who are aware of this, the easier it will be for people to actually note down the various indicators that you're supposed to monitor. Yeah, Kim, do you have anything to add from your experience? How are you building this capacity?
We are not for the moment. So we're the bad example of still having only one person for 20%, 10%, 5% of the time doing impact. But we have good hopes of changing that. The only way of capacity building for the moment is mentioning this in our project meetings, as I told you before. So we have project meetings. I show them the impact logic. I give them a hint or a template that could work. And what we also want to do now is we want a discussion with our funders, because another issue we run into is that our funders, they ask lots of information on impact, but then they give us like 2 sheets to fill it in, which is never enough. So the idea now is to have an open discussion with our funders and find out what the way is that they want to present this. Do they want tables? Do they want graphs? Do they want narratives? Because very often the real impact can only be grasped with narratives, but then you have loads of text that they don't always like to read. So that's also one of our next steps. It's not directly building capacity, but it's more open discussion with our funders on how to present everything we collect on impact.
Thanks, Kim. Rin?
Yeah, I wanted to comment about the capacity building. A few nodes told me afterwards that having to present their case study in a show and tell in front of their colleagues, their peers, was a great incentive to progress the case study. So this is really, it should be thought as, sign up to present your work, and then you'll advance it for sure, because you don't want to look like a fool in front of your impact peers. But also having presented things to that group, that committee of practice, is really great, because you won't feel alone. Quite often, I found that people doing impact in the Elixir nodes feel a bit isolated. They do not necessarily have a group of them, like a group of bioinformaticians that they may have if they are more technically minded. And so it's very important to connect to your peers. So we try to do that in Elixir, so that you see that your struggles, they are the common struggles. Your funders will ask different questions, but you will always find tips from your colleagues on how to deal with that and empower you to do better. Something also in terms of skills that I'd like to highlight is think if it is really worth it to build certain internal skills. So for example, at the Elixir Hub, we could have spent a lot of my time learning about making visualizations, because we have a dashboard of indicators, but we decided actually maybe it's not such a good use of my time. We're going to subcontract it and find somebody else to do the visualizations. This way, I could concentrate on other matters, more the strategic angle, who wants this information. So this is also to give you the idea that impact, sometimes it's teamwork with different expertise. You might need your technical colleagues to give you machine-derived information on the usage of your services. And you might not be able to do it yourself, but you have access to that internal expertise and make use of it. It's really a multidisciplinary endeavor, impact.
Would like to welcome Erika to tell us more about impact further from here.
Okay, thank you so much, Christine. And I'll go through the last bit of the impact toolkit. As we were going through, you could see that the toolkit includes lots of resources, and there are even more at the last parts. We have also a wide range of other impact-related resources that includes slides, fact sheets, guidance on dissemination, and these are essential to make impact happen. But actually, perhaps as we noticed, one resource that has proven to be popular, especially with our sibling research infrastructures, is the annotated bibliography list that Elixir is creating. And we have finally published it, and I will go very shortly to look about it and walk you through. So the toolkit collates a wide range of published works that are relevant to assessing the performance and impact of research infrastructures. And the structure of the annotated bibliography list is the 6 main sections. So as you can see in the slide, the first page of the contents is works related to named research infrastructures. Then we have projects outputs related to or involved research infrastructures, academic publications, impact evaluation manuals, other relevant publications, and even blog articles you can find linked in the bibliography list. So we also marked, as you can see from the example here on the page, key Elixir relevant publications in stars. So you can also see that the Elixir Impact Toolkit has reached the bibliography list already. So you can find it here. And it is a working document, the annotated bibliography list. And in the Impact Toolkit, it's actually listed as a Google Doc, which is like a living document. And we are welcome suggestions for new entries, and hopefully we'll publish the second edition of the annotated bibliography list. So that was my short overview. Thank you.
Thanks, Erika. Now we're open for the participants, if there are any questions to this topic. Yes, I came up with one question that I've been wanting to ask for a while, because you have done this with many proposals, Corinne. How do you use this knowledge practically when you write the impact section of research infrastructure grant proposals? Do you have a recipe for us to learn? I think we're several people writing proposals this fall, thinking that we now know how to do this, but it's not so easy when it's supposed to fit into this narrow impact section.
I would say for me, when in 2020, I think, the new guidance was released for Horizon Europe proposals, that they clearly asked for pathways to impact. I felt, I don't know, kind of relieved and scared. I felt like finally they're giving all this money, like in international development organizations never would give any funding if there was no pathway logic and indicators and all of that. And your Horizon was just giving so much, and it made no sense. So I was kind of pleased. So I think it gave us a head start, because at least we knew the difference between activities, outcome, and impact. It takes a while. It's normal, but at least we were there. I would say it was very helpful. Well, it's not so simple, because the European Commission, they actually give you quite often the expected outcomes and the expected impacts. So half of your impact logic is already designed for you, but you need to fit in your activities to that in a way that is logical, that they really contribute to this expected outcome. I found that sometimes the outcomes and the impact they provide to you don't match to each other, which is interesting. But regardless, once you have a kind of an impact logic designed with your activities, the expected outcomes and expected impact that they provide to you, then you can move on to remember that big dissemination section. And dissemination is about making sure that whatever you produce is used by others. And it's full of indicators there. And so there, again, your pathway can really help you provide the most meaningful indicators that will make a strong case to the reviewer of your proposal that you know what you're doing. You're going to do a lot of great work, and you're going to make sure users know about it, use it, and then lead to impact eventually. I don't know if that really answered your question, but I found it was very helpful to have really got that impact knowledge, because prior to that, I would have been really lost.
Yeah, thanks. Helps for me at least, and I may have to contact you again on this.
I was going to ask Corinne for the return on investment for Elixir. I mean, Elixir is investing in impact eventually before, but at least since Christine, myself, and Francesca, we started that staff exchange, and Corinne supported us from the very beginning in running our path to demonstrate impact in our nodes and also share our experiences. So what did Elixir as an infrastructure gain from having this specialized resource? Because you have studied a lot and you have received training, and also you produced a lot of documents. This means you had a lot of investment yourself, which means the investment of Elixir. What did we not we, because I'm not Elixir anymore, I'm Miri now, but what did Elixir benefit by this strong investment?
Anna, you're throwing me at the deep end. This is a massive question. I think, it's in a way, we are entering the impact part of the pathway of that endeavor, with Elixir having provided some funding, the European Commission. These were the activities we undertook to train people, to empower them to do impact at their own level. This created outputs. One of them is the Impact Toolkit. A number of papers have been produced. People have gained skills. So these were definitely, we're moving to the outcome part of the pathway. In terms of the impact of that impact portfolio, it's not in my hands in a way. It's, for example, you left us for another research infrastructure. Christine has also left Elixir Norway for Pasteur New, and yet you are here today to present that. So for me, that's the sort of impact, because you see the value of remaining connected to that work. I think the fact that that we are increasingly invited to share our knowledge. More recently, this was for the IATRIS workshop, knowledge exchange workshop in Amsterdam. David was there, a few of us were there, Erika as well. We will have the Impact Toolkit referenced in a number of documents that don't belong to us. I'm hoping there will be loads of downloads of that toolkit. So these are basically out of our hands. It's people doing it, doing the legacy. Half of the time, I don't know what's going on. And actually, when I hear, I'm very pleased. But when I hear, it's probably 5% of really what happens. It's people writing successful proposals. It's people encouraging others to look at impact. So these are really hard to measure. It would be a little case study by itself to actually look at the impact of the impact portfolio. But I have no doubt that if we start digging, we'll find a lot to be proud of. And the return on investment, I would say, would be very impressive.